You were a quantity guy, you became a quality guy.
All my distractions went away. And suddenly I looked up. I was like, oh my God, what is this?
The transformation you went through is very scary for people because suddenly saying, I'm in a zone that I'm not used to. You pivoted massively, and not only you came out okay, you came out better on the other side, and so can everybody else.
What's the phrase, right? It happened gradually and then all at once.
Look, it is okay to have a plan B, a plan of being yourself. Hi, everyone, from Round Glass Living with Sunny. I'm your host, Sunny Singh. I'm here with my friend and co host, Thomas Powers. Hi, Thomas.
Hi.
Today, our guest is Duff McDonald. Duff was a business journalist, and then he pivoted to something more meaningful in his life about how to live in the present moment, how to live in the now. He has had a number of New York Times bestseller books. We'll talk about that. Welcome, Duff, to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sonny, and nice to meet you, Thomas.
So, Duff, you were a quantity guy, you became a quality guy. From school to Goldman Sachs to writing great books, and then you pivoted.
I was about to write a book about the fact that we are distracting ourselves with all the counting. We count everything. We measure everything. We compare everything. And coming into COVID, I was getting ready to sort of kick it into gear on that book. Then comes quarantine, and then the tsunami of COVID-related data. So I said to my wife, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm talking about. We have a global pandemic, and we're so at a loss for how to respond to it that we're counting it. And I was about to do that. I started working on the book, and then suddenly everything broke open. And it hit me that in writing a book about numbers and how they are distracting us, if I were to talk about the numbers, I would be caught in my own cage, right? And suddenly I thought, oh, I'm sitting here locked at home, just like everyone else, and the calendar's gone, right? None of us had an appointment tomorrow or next week or anything. So time went a little weird for me. And there was nothing to measure, right? There was nothing to distract. Yeah, the COVID data I was paying attention to, but I'd sort of compartmentalized. But in the rest of life, like we'd get up and we'd say, what are we doing today? And then we'd have lunch and we'd do yoga and meditation. We'd do these other things. And the numbers disappeared for a bit. And suddenly it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I can't use quantification to attack quantification.
Was it a phased change, or did it happen over a number of weeks?
So, what's the phrase, right? It happened gradually and then all at once. So the quiet of quarantine, I think, pushed me into presence. So like everyone, I'd heard about presence before and sort of thought I understood it. But I actually, in retrospect, I thought it was a place you tried to get to, right? And looking back at it now, it's like, we are always present. You are always everywhere you are there. What happens is we're not fully present because we distract ourselves out of the moment, right? In whatever way we do it. Our mind goes back and forth in time. We think about something somewhere else. We start counting something, which sort of gets you away from your wholeness. Something happened. It was like, so in quarantine, all my distractions went away. And suddenly I looked up. I was like, oh my God, what is this? What is happening right now? And looking back at it, it's like I was present. Probably for the first time in my life.
Let's talk about this because I think this is very relevant to every person. Your relationship with self, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your daughter, and I'm sure that translated also and extended to your relationship with your social tribe, that changed. You pivoted there. That became the centerpiece of your life. It was no longer, I got to write a book about something and more numbers or inconsequential stuff in the bigger scheme of things. You really centered yourself. You got centered.
My whole career, I spent telling other people that their thinking was wrong. And suddenly in the moment, I'm like, what was I doing? Right? I don't even know what they're thinking is. So in that, as that was the thing where I was like, everything's upside down. I was like, I need to stop telling other people what to think. And I need to appreciate what is happening to me. I was like, the thing I should write about is the thing that I know most close, like the closest thing I know to truth. Right? And what is truth? I've come to understand that truth is now. It's what's happening, right? Everything converges in now. And I was like, oh, so I'll write a book about what is happening to me right now and what I am thinking right now. So I'm not guessing at what someone else may have thought, what may have happened at an event that I was not at. I'm trying to, put it back together. And the act of doing so, to your point, Sonny, I suddenly felt so connected to the whole story that it poured out like a river. And I was like, whatever I was doing before was not writing, right? It was some sort of exercise of the intellect. And this was coming through the heart, and I couldn't stop it. But you're exactly right. I suddenly found myself with a different point of view in my own life, which was a shock to me that was something that could happen.
Because you were supposed to be writing the precision paradox, and then a funny, interesting situation happened with your agent.
Yeah.
He was ready to drop you.
I wrote Tickled in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I gave it to my editor at Harper, who was expecting the precision paradox. She called me a week later and basically said, what the heck is this? A couple days later, she called me and said, actually, we don't want to publish this at all. Good luck with it. So I called my agent and I said, all right, we sold the precision paradox. I'm not writing that. I've written this. So now we need to sell this. And he called me back a week later and he said, I think you need a new agent. So then I turned to my wife. I was like, there's no plan B here. I don't know what I'm going to do because this is the book. And I'm not going to write the other book, and I'll have to pay that advance back if I don't sort something out. So I called an old friend, Hugo Lindgren. He was the editor at the New York Times Magazine for a while. I worked with him over the years. And he read it, and he said, here's the problem with this. You throw the reader into this new place you are without leading them by the hand. You need to take them in patiently and sort of say, here's what I was going to do. Here's why I couldn't do it. And here's how I ended up doing what I did. We cleaned it up. We sent it back to Harper and they said, okay, we can work with this now. So then I called my agent back and I said, do you still want to be my agent? Because now I'm back in this book contract. And he said, yes. And everything worked out. But for a moment, it was like, oh no, what's going to happen?
So Duff, if you think about the place you've left behind and the place you are now, and we live in this world, as you said, this drift towards quantification. We're a world obsessed with numbers and share prices and market caps and revenues and profits. And what's your view of that world now? Because that world is still there, and the being in the present world is there as well. What kind of relationship do you have with, if you like, your old world compared with your new world?
So, one of the things that's happened is that like remarkably and wonderfully, judgment has kind of dropped away for me, right? Like I spent a career in a judgment stance. I'm smarter than you. That's a stupid idea. This needs to change. And suddenly I found and I articulate this in the book a little bit. If you are fully present, time collapses, right? So you don't, fear and anxiety kind of dissolve, because the only fear is only can only sort of bring itself into being if you suddenly are speculating about a possible future, or comparing it to something that may have happened. So having become present, there was a moment when I looked back at my old self and said, oh my God, you were such a fool. But then suddenly realized it's like, no, this is expansion, right? Our mistake when we learn something is to what we tend to do is think, I know this, I'm smarter than those people, right? When what it really is the only person you're smarter than is the person you used to be, right? That's the only clear one. So even as I have suddenly said, I can't do this anymore, I don't think that by counting things we are getting at meaning. I have compassion and empathy and look and say that I was in this place here where I was burrowing through numbers trying to find an answer 2 years ago. I can't really criticize that, because otherwise it's criticizing my, my own development. So, how do I see a future interaction? It's like, of course, I'm going to keep telling this story that I'm telling you now.
And that's important because the transformation you went through is very scary for people, because suddenly saying, I'm in a zone that I'm not used to, right? Maybe, my plan A was always plan A. Plan B was never thought to be thought about. And suddenly it is plan B, which is, being, right? So it's good for people to hear your story saying you pivoted massively, and not only you came out okay, you came out better on the other side. And so can everybody else.
Absolutely. And this is why round glass is genius, Sonny, because you can't predict this event. You cannot, well, I don't know, but I did not invoke it or anything. It happened. What saved me from a very destabilizing shift, right? Which was basically, I don't know what's going on here anymore. And the things that I thought I now see as wrong, but they weren't immediately replaced with something else. Groundedness, meditation, yoga, diet, all of those things were like a something to hang on to as this thing happened. And if I hadn't had all of those, as you say, the destabilization could have led somewhere else. I had an insight at some point afterwards. I was like, oh, a lot of the people that regular sort of society brands as, yeah, he's kind of lost his mind, or she's kind of lost her mind. Suddenly I was like, oh, it's possible that they had a similar thing and didn't have, the ground to stand on, or something to keep them from coming apart, because it literally was the emptying out of who I thought I was, right? And it's all the things that round glass, that you guys are advocating and sort of promoting in such a glorious and beautiful way on the site. That's what saved me. And so the thing is, it's like the Vedantists say, you can't, that these kinds of shifts will happen when they happen. But you got to be ready.
Very,
Very
very
interesting.
good. Very,
Very
very good
interesting.
stuff. Very good.
It's a fascinating story. And I think the takeaway for our listeners and readers are that, look, Duff had a moment, scary for almost everybody to have a moment like that, where you're in a comfort zone and suddenly you're thrown into a tsunami. But at the end of the day, it was not a tsunami. It was just the wind that was blowing and blowing towards you, and you felt it was like a tsunami, and suddenly you find, oh, this is the breeze I want to experience in life. And so your story is inspiring. Your story is telling people, look, it is okay to have a plan B, a plan of being yourself. And that is fantastic. Duff, thank you for being on our show. Please check out Duff's book, Tickled. It's out, it's released. Thank you again. It was wonderful to have you. And what a fascinating story, Duff.
Thanks for having me. Like it's a thrill to share this and sort of spread the message you just said. Everything's
Everything
okay.
is okay.
Wonderful.
All of us. Everything's okay.
Yep.
Right?
Thank you, Duff.
So thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.